All right, welcome back, everybody. This is the GoatCast podcast. Yes, we maintain our schedule, so we're back normal time. How's it going, Big Nige? I know we've seen each other a lot these last couple of days. So, what's going on with you?
Not much. I know we've been on a couple other different podcasts, or been on Alleged Actually. If you haven't seen that, definitely go check out. Me and
Yep.
CW made a guest appearance there. Whenever that video drops, definitely monitor that channel and go check it out.
Yep.
We also appeared on Goatcast Hoops.
Yeah.
We had a nice little fun live stream over there. So definitely go check that video out on Goatcast Hoops. But I'm good. I'm chilling and I'm ready for today's topic.
Yeah, it's Monday, and with that said, today's topic we were supposed to do this weeks ago, but we didn't get a chance to. So now we're going to revisit this, and we're going to do a part two of our Hall of Famer series where we check out present and even former, guys that are just retiring, just leaving the league, whether they will get the nod into the Naismith Hall of Fame. It's not the NBA Hall of Fame, but it's mostly for all of basketball. It encompasses all of basketball. So, you know, we're going to take more of their NBA career into consideration here instead of their high school, college, even international play. We're going to look at just mostly their NBA credentials. And just a disclaimer: these are just our opinions. So if you're just watching this to see us have your exact opinion, then you're probably not going to want to watch. So if that's the only reason you're watching is to make sure we give you the same opinion that you have, then that this is what these are for. Is for different opinions to just kind of come into play and combat each other. So that's what we're doing here. So I know last time a few people had some choice comments about some of our criteria and some of our picks for Hall of Famers and non-Hall of Famers. We welcome the comments, but we're just going to give you that disclaimer that we're doing this for fun. And, this is just by our criteria. This is by no means concrete saying these guys are not Hall of Famers. We're just saying based on the criteria that we judge them on, they're not in our books. So with that said, let's start with a current champion and a currently on the Olympic team, Drew Holiday. Currently, he's the Boston Celtics. He's a two-time champion, two-time All-Star. He's been several times All NBA All Defensive Team, All Rookie Team, Teammate of the Year. He's been an asset almost anywhere he's been. But what do you think, Big Nige? Is Drew Holiday's, when he hangs it up, is he going to be a Hall of Famer?
I think he's got a good case to get into the Hall of Fame. I think looking at his body of work, looking at when you think of a player, and this is kind of where I'm starting to lean towards he'll be in the Hall of Fame, because when you garner the respect from your peers, that goes a long way in Hall of Fame discussion. We've seen Drew at his peak. We know Drew even at his older age, he's still one of the best defenders in the league. And once you get that rep for a really good defender in the league, it sticks with you. Whether you get, you take a couple steps back in the subsequent seasons, you are always going to be known as a defensive-minded guy. And therefore, when you get you have your good stretches where you look like one of the best defenders in basketball, it gets glorified. Same thing for basketball players who get a bad rep for not playing defense. Every time you get cooked, it's like magnified. So for him to have that for his calling card to be defense, it only accentuates and adds to his case as being a Hall of Fame player. But for me, and this is just my humble opinion, we look at the playoffs, right? And again, I'm not going to nitpick every little thing, but he does have an 11-6 playoff record. Wins, losses through multiple series, and he's had 17 series that he's been in this 8 years. So he was 11-6. Averaged 16.6 points a game or pretty decent efficiency. 43 from the field, 34 from the 3-point line, about 80% free throw shooter. So again, very respectable numbers.
Mm-hmm.
If we could separate the tiers of the Hall of Fame, that'd be great, because you You think of guys like MJ, Kobe, Bron, like the upper echelon players.
So your first
And he,
ballot Hall of Famers,
yeah, first ballot Hall of Famers. But I wish we could like kind of separate the Hall of Fame a little bit, just because everybody still gets the same title, Hall of Famer. But we all know in their playing days, there's levels to this. So all that being said, I think if we could put him in like maybe like the middle tier players, like mid tier players, like really good role players / like fringe starter level players, I think he's definitely in that Hall of Fame. But if you're asking me directly, is he a Hall of Famer? I would give him the nod strictly because of his defensive reputation. We've seen him do it on the biggest stage. He's got good shooting splits. He's got a very impressive playoff record, and he's a winner. Winning goes wherever he goes. He showed it in Milwaukee. He showed it in Boston. Even to a lesser extent when he was on the Pelicans with Anthony Davis. Injuries kind of took that squad out of a potential run for a championship. So again, he is an impact player, a winning guy, and he gets my nod for the Hall of Fame.
Okay. So would you put him? So when you're saying tiers, your first ballot Hall of Famers, Jordan, Kobe, LeBron, Kareem, those guys, and then maybe your Dennis Rodman level, you would put him kind of at that level of, Dennis Rodman, I think had the same amount of NBA All-Star appearances, and he was a multiple NBA champ, but he was more, you could say, he was more a role player in his, at his peak. He was, he played a certain role. He wasn't Drew Holiday or Dennis Rodman were never called on to go hit the last bucket. He wasn't supposed to, put a bunch of buckets in the basket. So I think he's that tier. He's the Dennis Rodman level where, Dennis had a little more. He was a little more had a little more notoriety to him because just of who he was, which helped him to gain more, fans and more focus. But I mean, I consider them in the same tier. And I agree with you. I think he's going to eventually. It probably won't happen, soon after he retires. But I say 10 years down the line, his name will come up and he will be inducted into the Hall of Fame. I mean, if a guy like Ben Wallace is in the Hall of Fame, I don't see why Drew Holiday. I mean, Ben Wallace has some defensive players of years, but I don't see why Drew doesn't get that nod as well. So going on to another player who may not have the same type of notoriety, we're going to shoot over to Blake Griffin. So what do you think, Blake Griffin, 6-time NBA All-Star, 3-time All-NBA. He was a second team and third team, Rookie of the Year, All-Rookie first team. Of course, we remember the famous slam dunk contest. And was poorly represented and clipped, I will say. But other than that, what do you think? Is Blake Griffin, does he get in on his Clipper years, or is he a no for you?
Blake Griffin, a phenomenal basketball player, kind of a little bit of a revolutionary kind of power forward. He can, at his peak, one of the best rim grazers of all time. Would put you in a poster on any given play. He's had a boatload of thunderous dunks. Paul Gasol, one comes to mind. Perkins, Serge Ibaka. He's put some people's favorite bigs in a bag. So he definitely is a great player. We even got to see him kind of switch his game up as the injuries piled on. And when he went to the Pistons, he started working on his game, like to stay in the league, to stay relevant. He developed a 3-point shot. He developed a handle, started competing on the defensive end, especially in the later years, and especially when he was in Boston. Like, we got to see him just come in and lock Giannis up for spur moments. We saw him, go up and challenge, lob attempts and things of that nature to help that Brooklyn Nets squad in his older years. So, but for me personally, again, gotta look at the playoffs. 5 for 9 in the playoffs. Yes, I will give him that. He's had a very injury-riddled career, which really derailed him in that Clipper squad that, again, that you said was accurately showed on clipped. Didn't do Blake no favors, but unfortunately, 5 for 9 in the playoffs really isn't cutting it. Like, yes, he averages about 18 points a game, 7 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 49% from the field, 37% from the 3-point line. Very, very good splits in terms of his playoff production. But compared to the caliber of player that we were accustomed to seeing in the regular season, he just did not show that in the playoffs. And that's in large part because of injuries. And so, with that, I just do not have him in my Hall of Fame. I just think if he could have stayed healthy for a couple of those seasons, especially in that 2013, 20 to 2017 range, if he could have got more games, could have took that Clippers squad probably at least to a finals, I would say, if they were healthy. So injuries just took him out for me. And that's unfortunate because he's one hell of a basketball player.
I have to agree. I think Lob City suffered because they came at a time where there was just so many good teams out west that, as good as they weren't getting over the Spurs or the Warriors or the Thunder. I know my camera's getting blurry, but I'm gonna keep going. But he just came in a Western Conference that was really stacked, and that's what we have to hold against him. His playoff performances weren't that great. The Clippers, for as good as they seem to be, just never could get over that hump. And I think that works against him. He just didn't have, he had a phenomenal, first couple years from his rookie year on until those injuries piled up. But other than that, I just think his back end of his career was just not good enough for him to get that nod. And unfortunately, I think that Blake probably, but something tells me, some of these guys' names you just figure they'll give them a pass, even without the championships, even with the poor performance. Because he had a hype to him. He was a name. He had name value throughout that run with the Clippers with Lob City. But he just didn't have, he doesn't have the accolades. And he just, he finished his career just poorly, in my opinion. He just kind of faded out. So I'm going to agree with you, but I could see him somehow, kind of like I've talked about with LaMarcus Aldridge. I could see him sneaking in at some point just because they want to relive those Lob City years and say, hey, remember this dunk? So I'll give him a possibly, but most likely not. Based on his NBA career, no. He had a pretty good career at Oklahoma in college, so they might sneak him in for that. So moving on, another champion. If my thing will work, we're going to move over to Rajon Rondo. Whenever my video picks up. Okay, there we go. Rajon Rondo, he's a 2-time NBA champion, of course, with the Boston Celtics in 2008 and with the Lakers in 2020, 4-time NBA All-Star. Didn't realize he had that few All-Star picks. He's been All-NBA third team. He's I believe that's 2-time All-Defensive first team and a 2-time All-Defensive second team. So, so he's led the league in assists a couple years and steals for a year. So, Rajon Rondo, does he get the nod into the Naismith Hall of Fame? And while you're talking, I'm going to work on this camera.
Okay. Yeah. So, for me, Rondo, when you think of Rondo, again, similar to the Drew Holiday thing, you think of a winner. We talking about body of work. We talking about postseason, regular season. One of the best point guards to ever play the game. You've seen the all NBA selections. We know what kind of point guard he is. Obviously, his numbers don't scream at you because he wasn't a scoring type of guard. He could score when called upon, but when you play with the likes of KG, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, they don't really need that from you. That wasn't his role. In his peak years, that wasn't his role to be a scorer. He was one of the best quintessential point guards, I'd say, in this age, right? But go back and look because I got to see prime Rondo. I got to see when he dropped 40 plus on Miami back with when it was
I
LeBron,
remember that.
Wade, and Bosh. And so like I could see he competed on that big stage. We saw what he did with Kobe in the finals, in 09. So with all those things to consider, then you see in his later career how he contributes to the Lakers in that bubble championship. We saw that steady hand that he brought to that second unit, and even coming in for spurt moments to play with LeBron and AD and throw those lobs, set the table up for them, get AD the ball. Him and AD always had good communication on the floor, and they had a good feel for each other out there. So, again, and let's take a look at his playoffs. 17-8. Very, very respectable record in the postseason. Obviously, again, his numbers don't scream at you. 12 and a half, about 8.5 assists. On 44, 33 splits. Not the greatest shooter. We understand that. He never was, but he never got to shoot that much because he came in the age where the NBA was still a little bit old school. Point guards were still kind of, staying in that mid-range area or just going straight to the basket. Not a lot of shooting, point guards, especially with his dynamic being as a 6'1" guard. So with all that being said, he is a winner, and I would give him the nod in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, absolutely. I put this one in because I believe you have to have one no-brainer on here, and I believe he's a no-brainer. Two-time champion. He was a throwback to the regular point guard, to the point guard we grew up watching, 80s, 90s, and even before that, who just ran the offense, and he wasn't a score first type of point guard. He was going to get you the ball where it best served you. He was going to do it very well, and if he had to score, he could. He wasn't the most efficient guy. He wasn't going to go out there and light up, even though there were nights he could, and he did, but that was not his calling card. And for that, I think they are definitely going to reward him with a nod in the Hall of Fame. I wouldn't be surprised if it's not in the next couple of years, because he is officially retired now, I believe. And with that said, I could see him in the next 4 or 5 years getting in there. And, he deserves it. He's been a solid player wherever he went. He always was a contributor. He played for the Pelicans for a while, didn't he? Him and AD were Pelicans for a while. So, yeah. And that Pelican team was pretty good. I remember they won a playoff series. That might have been one of their
when they handled the Trailblazers. It was like him and Drew and AD, and they were talking about the defensive tandem that they brought against Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum.
Yeah, so I remember that series, and nobody expected them to pull that out, and they dominated in some aspects. So Rajon Rondo will be most definitely a Hall of Famer. I think we all can agree.
And before we get off Rondo, let me correct myself. He won in 2008, not 2009. So before y'all jump on me,
I was going.
My bad.
My
bad.
09 was the Orlando Magic and Lakers, who Kobe scorched. But so next possible Hall of Famer, Amar'e Stoudemire. Another guy that unfortunately had a lot of injuries towards the end of his career, never got to completely complete his career from what we saw. But, 6-time NBA All-Star, 5-time All-NBA First Team, NBA Rookie of the Year, NBA All-Rookie First Team. Those accolades don't jump out. I mean, he had 1 first team and 4 second teams, but still good. And that was during we had some great players during those years. Those mid 2000s and early 2010s had a lot of great talent. So him being on the first and second team meant he was a solid player. So would you put Amar'e Stoudemire in the NBA, in the Naismith Hall of Fame?
So for Stoudemire, he and Blake Griffin have a pretty identical career. In the eyes of injuries robbed them of what they could have been. Now, I think Amar'e Stoudemire is a little bit more decorated in his career. His body of work looks a little bit better. All right. But again, we talk about and even before I get into the playoffs, like regular season wise, he was a monster. 19 points a game, 8 rebounds, 54% from the field. Obviously, wasn't the greatest 3-point shooter. That's not what the game was at that time. I'm not going to vilify him for shooting about 24% because again, that's not really what his game was. He was an OG lob threat. Had a good mid-range game, good touch around the basket. Not the greatest defender, but very athletic. He can block some shots and alter some shots with his athleticism. But me, we got to get to the playoffs, and his playoff record wasn't very. It was like I said, kind of identical to Blake's. 6-10. Averaging about 19-7 on 51, 25, and then 75 from the free throw line. So again, not the greatest. Doesn't really move the needle for me. Again, when you think of a guy like Amari Stoudemire, he doesn't really. What the first thing comes to your mind isn't winning. It's not championship level basketball. It's injuries, unfortunately. So, and that's what's probably just going to haunt him, just like Blake Griffin. It's what could have been, but unfortunately, I do not have him in my Hall of Fame, and it sucks. But he's a great player, just not a Hall of Famer.
But before I give my opinion on that, which was the better version, Phoenix or New York, in your opinion?
In my opinion, I'd say Phoenix for sure.
Yeah, I mean Phoenix was when he was at his athletic peak. The injuries kind of grounded him once he got to New York, and he became more of a outside threat. He was more of a. I'm not going to say he was LaMarcus Aldridge, but he was more of a mid-range shooter. Could get to the basket, but he wasn't a guy that was going Phoenix. But he had Steve Nash with him. He was just. He could kill you from almost anywhere other than 3-point line, but he was killing you anywhere. He could get, and he was so athletic, bigs couldn't really stop him. But yeah, I have to unfortunately agree with you on this one. Mari was destined to be that guy, and he had a chance in New York, I think, because New York for a little while became his team, and then Carmelo came and kind of took it over. But I mean, he had every chance to get to that level, and I think he's another product of those years where they were just top-notch talent. He had to deal with your Tim Duncans out there and the other bigs that were prominent during the mid 2000s, and I think he just kind of got lost in the shuffle. His game didn't quite evolve, but he didn't have to back then because it didn't become the perimeter-based game it is now. But I feel like if he had added that to his game, he probably would have lasted longer. And I think he could have probably added some really good years beyond, his New York Knicks years. But unfortunately, he didn't. He didn't get that aspect to his game at an efficient rate. So I have to agree with you. I don't think Stoudemire will. I mean, I hate it because I really liked his game and I liked him as a player for so many years, but there's just something you have to do. Even if you don't win a championship, you got to be the man for at least a longer time than he was. And you got to be a definitive man at your position. And he just wasn't. And that's just unfortunate. I think he like Blake had every opportunity if he stayed healthy to be that and get to that next level. He wasn't going to be Tim Duncan or KG or those guys, but he could have been right in that mix. But unfortunately, the injuries derailed him, and he kind of faded. So unfortunately, no for Stoudemire, but great career, and I enjoyed watching him. So moving on, this guy's currently in the NBA. DeMar DeRozan. Where do you place him? Is he a Hall of Famer or is he on the outside looking in?
Oh, this one's a no-brainer for me. He's on the outside looking in. Listen, man, DeMar DeRozan, he's a great player, very good mid-range scorer. He never was all that on the defensive end in my opinion, but we look at peak DeMar DeRozan, like it shows up there 7 times All-Star, 2-time All-NBA. Like, we saw the best versions of him, and those days are far but behind him. But so if we're just judging the peak DeMar DeRozan, it's unfortunate that he had to go up against a peak LeBron
But
or
hold on. He was a all-star this year.
oh yeah, for sure. I mean, but again, that he was on
So
the
his
Bulls
best
team
days are
that won.
behind him.
Yeah, he's almost 35. He's like 34. He's
I mean, he's
no.
still kicking.
His game translate, and he can probably play well into his late 30s if he wants to, because he has the game to back it up. However, we're not judging him about where he's at now, because again, 34 going on 35, he's not going to get any better. He's going to put himself in better positions to, capture a championship and other accolades, like he did by getting traded to the Sacramento Kings. We'll see how that goes. Is he the missing piece to that puzzle? We'll see. But he's a 6-time All-Star, 3-time All-NBA, or 3-time All-NBA. So let's go back to the playoffs. And then this wasn't that long ago where that Raptors team was favored against a LeBron James. Nobody was picking the Cavs to beat them. And no, we're not doing this to plug LeBron. We're just saying he was the best player on that team. He should have been the guy to play at least a fraction of how he played in the regular season. Had he done that, there's no doubt in my mind Cleveland would have lost that series. But DeMar DeRozan got his nickname DeMar DeFrozen in that specific series. He was so bad that his coach, and you remember this, Dwayne Casey had to bench him. Now, you can tell me anything, any other stat that you want to throw out there, but if you're the best player, why are you getting benched by your coach in a pivotal game?
We got an extra member joining us real quick.
That's
my
Sonny.
man Sonny.
Oh, Lord. Oh gosh. But anyways, I just you can't be a Hall of Famer if you are in your peak years. You can't get benched in a pivotal playoff game because you just given up. You're not shooting good shots. You're getting cooked on the other end. Like that does not speak Hall of Fame to me. It speaks very good player, very good regular season player, but Hall of Fame, we just can't do that. 4-7 in the playoffs. Yeah, I can't do anything with that, right?
Wow, that's rough.
And yeah, I mean, but again, he hasn't been in the playoffs that many times, so I don't want to just hold that number. And when you look at his playoff splits, 22 points a game, 4.7 rebounds, 3.7 assists, not crazy. 41% from the field, 21% from three. That's kind of scary considering that he's not a high volume 3-point shooter. So you would think that his, percentages would be a little bit higher than 21%. But all things considered, DeMar DeRozan ran into a LeBron James. There was some injuries in his career, but for the most part, he kind of stayed out of injuries. He just does not have the success. And could he get some more, jewelry down the line? I don't know how much stock you'll have in Sacramento. I don't have very much of it. So I think he'll play some meaningful games toward the tail end of his career with Sacramento, but I don't think it'll be enough to put him in the Hall of Fame.
I got to put him in that Richard Jefferson, Paul Millsap tier, not tier, but I have to put him with the guys that are terrified when LeBron James is on the other side of the court. And it shows every single playoff game they play, because Richard Jefferson, when he was on the Spurs, would freeze up every time he saw LeBron James. Paul Millsap would be a beast all season. Couldn't stop him. I mean, he was the second coming. And then LeBron James on the court, he couldn't make a basket in a YMCA game. And DeMar DeRozan was the same thing. I remember that series very vividly because I had high hopes for the Raptors. All the sports media gave us false hope. And LeBron and them just went out there and cooked them. I mean, they were a shell of the team that they were all season. If I'm not mistaken, they were the top team in the East.
Yes, I believe they're top team.
I believe they were. And, I mean, they were just killing teams. DeMar DeRozan was looking like MVP levels. got to that first round. That was the one where LeBron hit that game winner where he was flying out of bounds and hit it on the side. And
against OG
yeah,
Anunoby.
yeah, and that let me know that series was over, and that was it. So yeah, unfortunately, he's had a really, really good career, and I think that in some ways they're probably going to try to slip him in because of that. He's been such a steady player throughout his career that they might give him the nod just because he's rising. I forgot what he's on the scoring list, but he's up there. He's always been a consistent scorer wherever he went, whether it's the Raptors, the Spurs, the Bulls. He's been consistent, and I think that's a key. So he's been a top player. He's been an all-star all throughout for the most part, throughout his career. He's just never gotten over that hump, and he's just never put it in the next gear and been that. He's been the guy on the team, but you saw that he wasn't built to be the guy on the team. He was built to be that Kyrie on a team, that second, I don't want to say second fiddle, but his best position would most likely be under a guy that can do it all and get the job done. He's just not that guy. I think Kyle Lowry played better in that series than DeRozan did. So, unfortunately, his career doesn't scream Hall of Fame, but because of the consistency, I think he might slip in. But we'll see. So, last but not least, we have another current player, Paul George, who's on the move and is now a Philadelphia 76er. He is an 8-time NBA All-Star, 6-time All-NBA team. He got one first. I thought he had more than that, but a second team and a third team, a couple of those, and 4-time NBA All-Defensive team. Thought he had a few more of those also. He's an NBA Most Improved Player back in 2013. He led the Indiana Pacers when he was a Pacer. Kind of took the backseat role once he got to OKC and even in LA, and probably will going forward. But does that hurt him in the long run, and does that keep him from the Hall of Fame?
Ooh, this one is tough. Paul George, man. I mean, I don't want to say my first reaction to seeing Paul George is Pandemic P, because that would be unfair. That was one bad series. That'd be like defying LeBron by his bad series against the Mavericks when he, choked or whatever these people want to say. He didn't play well, and Paul George did not play well either. We can go back and look at his body of work. 20 point per game, career average. He's just coming off a season averaging 22.6, 5 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 47% from the field, 41% from three. I got to give him a shout out before I continue because he's one of the best 3-point shooters we've seen. A big wing, a big two-way guy. He's been the lead dog on his team for a multitude of seasons until he joined the Thunder first with Russ. That was like a 1-2 punch with him. He had his best season playing for the Thunder, and they were really good. I remember that team. Like, they were really a sneaky team, and unfortunately, they got sent home by Dame Dollar.
Damian Lillard, yeah. I remember that walk-off
bye-bye shot.
Yeah.
And that was unfortunate. But again, Paul George didn't really play that well in that series. But again, not going to vilify him too much, considering that Russ had the ball in his hands the majority of the time and was the lead decision maker with the ball. Then we get to the Clippers, and we see the injury-riddled seasons that he had with a guy like Kawhi Leonard. Of course, two great players, but not any success to show for it. So then we kind of, just looking at his body of work, like you said, we see the all NBAs, we see the all defensive teams. Then we go to the playoffs. And again, I'm trying not to be that guy, but I got to be consistent, right? So he's 8-11 in the playoffs, 21 points a game, 7.5 rebounds, 4 assists. Great shooter, man. Great defender, but not a lot of success. To be as great as he is, not a lot of success. And if I'm going to stay consistent, I got flack and I got killed for it for not having James Harden in my Hall of Fame. So if I don't have James Harden,
Mm.
how? How can I put Paul George in the Hall of Fame? I can't do it because I got to stay consistent. I like Paul George better than I like James Harden because he plays both sides of the ball, but not a lot of success for the kind of player that he is. If he was a role player, it'd be completely different. Like if he was viewed as like a Drew Holiday, a player of that caliber, he'd be a shoe-in for that, mid-level kind of fringe starter kind of guy. But he's definitely an MVP caliber player at his peak. And so if I'm gauging him off that, he is not in the Hall of Fame. Not enough success to be one of the guys, one of the best in his position for the last 10 plus years. Not nothing to show for it. So he's not in my Hall
Oh,
of Fame.
that's rough, and I'm sure there'll be some pitchforks out for you soon. But
I'm sure.
you don't give him a little slack for those Eastern Conference years when LeBron was just dominating.
I give him like it helps his case, especially since the competition he played early in his career with that Miami team, that Pacers, I mean not Pacers, excuse me, that New York team was pretty formidable. Atlanta was nothing to sneeze at, but I mean when we looked at the Pacers, I mean the Bulls too for sure, but when we looked at the Pacers, the only team that really stood in their way was Miami. I mean the Bulls to a lesser extent, but by that time, D Rose's injury history was kind of already derailing him in that team, and then Paul George and them, they were taking off. So the only team in their way was Miami.
Yeah, I mean, so if he wins the championship this year, can you see him sliding in, even based on everything prior? If he gets that ring this year, can he slide? Does he meet your criteria a little bit to slide in?
If he is the second best player on this Sixers squad, and he helps Embiid in that city of Philadelphia capture a championship, and they beat a team like the Boston Celtics or whoever, I would think that would be just enough to get him into the Hall of Fame. Barely.
He's not going to be the second best player, but
I mean, Maxey is nice, but I think Paul George.
You think that Paul George is going to usurp him as the second guy on that team?
I think for moments, yeah. I don't think every game, but when called upon, I think he can create more mismatch problems than Maxey can, depending on the matchups.
Okay. Well, if we're judging his body of work right now from this past season back to when his rookie year, if he retired today, he said, I know what, I can't do it no more, I think he gets in. I think he gets in, even with the rough, playoff record, and he has been to conference finals. He has been the leader of a team. He's had MVP caliber seasons or season. And he's been in the conversation of the best. 6 All-NBA teams isn't phenomenal, but it's not bad either. How many years has he played? He came in what?
I want to say he came in 2010.
2010.
2010 or 2011 is one of those.
Okay, so he's got about a 13, 14-year career so far. 6 of those years he's been All-NBA. That's not bad. So if his season ended today, I could see them put him in there. He's been consistent scorer. He's lit it up, multiple time All-Star. If 14 years, 8-time NBA All-Star. He's he was a part of an Olympic team but got hurt. But I think based just off of everything he's done, even without that championship, I think he's done enough to get into into the Hall of Fame. I just think you just can't just put it all out there from his Clippers years, and that's just I think his Clippers years hurt him, even though he played well for the Clippers. I think those years are looked back on as disappointments. I think that's going to hurt his case because even losing in Indiana, those were admirable losses because you lost to one of the greatest players of all time, in LeBron James and that great Miami Heat team. So you can live with those losses, and even OKC, that was a dagger, and most guys
Deep
ain't gonna
too.
hit that. Yeah, most guys ain't gonna hit that. So that was just the basketball god saying we want Portland to move on. So with that said, you look at Pandemic P, that was rough. You look at these last couple years where he has been the best player on the court since Kawhi hasn't been on the court in the playoffs. But he's just not been able to. I thought this year was going to be the year where he could drag them, even with the gimpy Kawhi, he could drag them into at least the second round and maybe get Kawhi back and do something. I just thought they matched up really well against Dallas. We saw differently. So I can't judge as long as I don't judge just solely on these last Clipper years. I think he should because he's been that good and he's been. If he's not been top 10, he's been right in that top 10, 15 players for a good amount of years. And I think that says something in a current era where you got LeBron James, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Giannis, Jokic, all these great players. He's been in the mix with those guys. All of those guys are going to be first ballot Hall of Famers. So the fact that he's in the mix with those guys, I think his name should go in. If he wins a championship, I think this will be just like Rajon Rondo, where it's a no-brainer. But I don't mind you being tough because you got to be tough. Everybody can't go in. So if it was my choice, I guess I'm too nice just because they're part of my memories and part of my, basketball years. A lot of times I'll give them the nod just because I remember highlights from them and great things they've done. But, you do have to look more into it than just, the great highlights they had. You got to, it's a totality thing, and you got to look at their total careers. And the playoffs for you, way big. Playoffs aren't as big to me just because we've known the teams that have been in the playoffs and have won championships these last couple years, the last 10 or so years. So we've had some great teams, some dynasty teams as far as the Warriors, not so much Spurs, but then you have Miami, a great Cleveland team who won that one. And then, the last couple of years, you just had some really good, well put together teams that were going to win the championship. So, yeah, I think he'll definitely get in there.
You don't think the for the Thunder, you don't think the way that they got, blitzed by Donovan Mitchell in his first, I believe it was his rookie season, maybe it was second season, but that Thunder team, how they lost embarrassingly to that Jazz team, and Paul George didn't play very well in that series, along with Russell Westbrook, but Paul George and I think Carmelo Anthony, especially those two.
Yeah. I remember that 3-man team.
Does that not hurt his case?
That does hurt his case. So,
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, you can look at that. You can look at, and there's some Indiana years you can look at, but I think altogether, like I said, I wouldn't put him on the outside looking in. I think he's got 1 foot in. How about that? I think he's got 1 foot in, and there's a little bit more he's got to do to get the other foot in for me to be just like, yes, he's going to be in. Definitely no brainer, but he's close.
I'm good
He's on
with
the
that.
cusp. He's on the cusp of doing that. So that will conclude our second round of Are They Hall of Famers? Will you change your mind on anybody before we?
No, I want to double down on my Harden take and just say he was.
Well,
I'm
got
just
the floor.
look. I'm just saying. Look, I'm not saying nothing crazy. I'm just saying, just look at his playoff record. As great of a player as James Harden was, or I guess technically since he's still playing, he still is great. 15-15 in the playoffs, though. I'm just saying, and that was shocking to me because I thought his record would be a lot better. But we talk about Hall
Mm,
of Famers, and you want to throw the first ballot Hall of Fame out there. I mean, LeBron's 41-13, MJ's 30-7, Kobe's 33-10. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, that might be a conversation somebody else needs to have because apparently I can't have it because people think I'm crazy. But I'm just doubling down on what I said. 15-15 in the playoffs. It's kind of nasty
that's
work,
rough.
in
I
my
mean,
opinion.
that is rough to look at, but it's James Harden. You just look at his overall game and how he kind of they had to change rules because of him. When you have a player that they have to change the rules for, they meant a lot to the league. So he's going to get the nod no matter how his playoff career pans out. James Harden's going to be in the Hall of Fame. He just is. He's an MVP, former MVP. I mean, he's had scoring titles. At certain points, he was just a juggernaut of himself. Just got to the playoffs. Teams doubled him, tripled him. He just couldn't get it done. So, I mean, that's come on. I mean, Carmelo. I mean, Carmelo
Mm.
was a. I mean, I know how you feel about. And yeah,
It ain't basketball reasons why I don't like
yeah.
Karl
Well, no,
Malone.
no, no. I mean, yeah, he's not a very good person, but
Mm.
basketball wise, he was great. Charles Barkley, great. Just couldn't get his team there. Just couldn't do it. And those guys are Hall of Famers. So,
We really need to go through that list of like Hall of Famers, and we might need to start kicking some
oh yeah,
people
yeah.
out because I mean,
That's gonna be
we can agree there's some people on that list that they shouldn't be on there. As good as some of those guys were, it's worth a second opinion. It's worth a second look, in my opinion.
well. That is a series that will be popping up soon. We're going to go through some of those Hall of Fame names that made it in that maybe didn't have the resume that many people think they did, and might not have been as deserving as we think. I mean, there's probably going to be a lot. Because your criteria is pretty tough, so there's going to be a lot of
Kick
them
them out.
guys that
Kick them
that
out.
might be might be getting that pink slip as far as being a Hall of Famer. But that will be a series we do coming up soon, hopefully. So, any parting words? Anything you got to say?
I mean, for this series, whether players should be in the Hall of Fame or not, again, this is just our opinion. Don't crucify us in the comments. If you disagree, by all means, let us know. And if you agree, let us know. But you don't got to go and call people delusional and all these things. Like it ain't gonna hurt my feelings, but it's just a waste of your time to
Yeah, I mean, it's
comment
fine.
that. But yeah, I mean, either way, it's fine if you do or you don't. But definitely like the video. Comment your ideas and thoughts down below. Help us get to that 100 subscriber goal. We're knocking at the door, but we're not quite there yet. So we just need a little help from y'all, a little push, so we can finally get the GOAT debate that you guys have been waiting for between me and CW. And
Absolutely.
that's all I got.
And we may have I'm working on it. We might have a guest at some point soon, another content creator. So be on the lookout. I'm not going to name any names, but it's working on it. But one thing I do have to say, and I don't want to bring up this channel that much because they're going to think we're just, stalking them or something. But I was listening to the panel yesterday for Michael Jordan fans are the best. And one of their panelists, probably one you don't quite like that much, was in rare form and said that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is not his top 10 on his top 10 list. And I wanted to say something. I didn't want to call in, but to me, that was just absolutely ridiculous. I'm sure he knows who he is. If anyone thinks that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is not a top 10 NBA player of all time, I don't know. I just don't know what to say to you.
Puff, puff, give.
Yeah, exactly. There's something going on that just, I mean, maybe you just don't like him. Maybe it's just a personal thing, which is fine if you just have a personal vendetta against Kareem. If Kareem did something to somebody in your family, I don't know. But when he said that, it just blew my mind. And the fact that the panel didn't really attack him on it was crazy to me. But
blissful ignorance is the nicest way I can put it.
I'm not gonna say that, but they got some interesting opinions, and they do a good job of what they do. But I just had to throw that out there because if y'all watch that, I don't know if y'all watch that channel and y'all hear that, please know that is just bypass that part because you'll lose brain cells. But anyway, like you said, please like and subscribe to the channel. Help us out. Almost at that 100 subscriber count, and can't do it without you guys. So if you guys can just hit that subscribe, hit that like button, it helps us in the algorithm. Help us, get back some good numbers. It's a work in progress. Working on getting a new microphone, getting some new stuff for the channel. So just bear with us. We're doing the best we can, but this is a labor of love that we're trying to build upon. So, and we can only build on it if you guys are here to help us out. So please just continue to help us. Comment. If you hate what we said, that's fine. If that's the reason why you're not gonna come back to the channel, that's unfortunate. But I understand if our views and opinions don't align with yours, then I mean that's life. But either way, we're going to get out of here. We'll be back soon, probably next Monday. There's a lot to talk about, or later this week, Team USA. Got some interesting things going on. A lot of people are talking about their lineups and what they got going on with their lineups. Hopefully, maybe we can get back quickly this week and kind of go over our thoughts on who would start, who would be, kind of our rotations for that Team USA team. And maybe we'll just do a little short something. But yeah, that's something we definitely got to talk about. So with that said, I think that's it for today.
All right, y'all.
All right.
Y'all be blessed and definitely stay tuned for the next video.
Yep. And thank you all that came in and checked us out. Thank you for watching. And we'll be back very, very soon. So appreciate your view.